spending, an increase in profitability of businesses. Consumers now seem to be spending more as well. The problem is that this is a false boom, a bubble, as the phrase goes. Why? There's a stimulus to investment spending and a stimulus to consumer-oriented spending. The problem is that that people are trying to undertake either more consumption or more investment at alternative and contradictory points along the production possibility frontier. You know, it's said that, you know, two objects can't occupy the same space at the same time. And you can't be at two places at the same time, right? You can't be at two places at the same time. You can't be at point B and point C at the same time in an economy, because you don't have the resource wealth to do both to that amount. Consumption of C2 and investment of I2. You only have enough to be either this consumption with that amount of investment, or this amount of investment with that amount of consumption, or the original combination of consumption and investment. So the system is being pulled in two directions that are inconsistent with each other. And that is why the bubbles burst. That is why every time during you see the upturns, there seems to be more investment spending, simultaneously a lot more consumption spending, but that's because the system is being pulled in two directions that are inconsistent. It's sort of like pulling the rubber band in two directions. And it may initially have some elasticity, but finally you can't pull it anymore, and if you keep trying to pull it in those two directions, eventually the rubber band snaps, does it not? That's the same logic. You're pulling the economy in two directions that you don't have the resources to support and maintain, and eventually snap. And that's why the bubble bursts. That is how the business cycle generally and basically comes about. Now, obviously I've simplified it, right? A two-dimensional diagram, just sort of a commonsensical understanding in terms of resource availability, different uses of the resources, the interest rate being artificially manipulated, giving out a false signal. But in its core essential, this is basically what happens in the business cycle. The artificial boom and prosperity of trying to do more of everything, and eventually the discovery the resources are not large enough to sustain it all. That's why housing bubbles burst. Housing construction, and now there's houses can't be completed. Business buildings are left half finished. People don't have the money to be able to pay these prices they thought the houses were going to sell for. Housing prices go down. People undertake a lot more consumption spending, even sometimes getting into consumer debt. Interest rates are low. I'm not going to save. Instead, I'm at these low rate of interest, I'm going to put money on my credit card to consume even more. But people get out of whack with what their income can really afford, so that you have a consumer debt bubble sometimes. And that's the logic. It's because the central bank falsifies an important market price, the rate of interest, that's supposed to keep the whole system in equilibrium, balanced, coordinated, and instead distorts the entire process and throws the economy out of whack. Now clearly, once the economy has been pushed in these two conflicting and contradictory directions, something's got to give, and the system has to return to normal. In other words, the system has to move back to a consumption, savings, and investment relationship in which the choices of people to consume and invest is equal to and matched by the available level of savings to do both. In other words, an equilibrium rate of interest, an equilibrium matching of consumption and investment spending. Now you notice I made this inside the production possibility frontier. That's because people find, well, you know, too many workers were drawn into construction and work, home building. Too many people were drawn into these employments here. And now when the bubbles burst, people have to sort themselves out. Gosh, my job has disappeared here. I have to now find a different job. There's a period of unemployment. That is, the economy, in a sense, working below its production possibility. Not because some inherent fault in the economy, but because now, having made the error of being drawn into employments that in the post-bubble era are found to be non-sustainable, people have to sort themselves out. I've lost my job. Where do I find a new job? And there's a period of time sorting that out. But the economy then moves back and gravitates back towards some comparable point A. So in fact, the recession stage of a business cycle, the recession stage of the downturn, is people's discovery of the errors made during the boom years and the attempt to readjust, readapt, resort themselves out to a more balanced pattern of resource use, employment opportunities equal to the available resources in society. It's the faulty manipulation of money and the distortion of interest rates that causes this dilemma that economies are going through now and seem to constantly go through as long as central banks carry out this manipulative process. Okay, let me end it with there, and we'll take some question and answer. Thank you very much.